Welcome to day 2 of Introduction to Digital Video Production. Today we're going to be talking about graphics and effects. To start off with, head to the Google Classroom, head to where it says Class Assets, Graphics and After Effects, and download the first 3 videos, number 1 Snake, number 2 Frog, and number 3 Lizard. Put them into a new folder, either on your desktop or into an external hard drive or flash drive, and then import them into your Premiere file. This would be a good spot to go ahead and pause the video until you do so. Today, we're going to be focusing specifically on effects. To utilize effects in Premiere, go ahead and head up to the very top bar. We've already seen the Assembly and Editing tabs. Now we're going to go to the Effects tab. Go ahead and click on it. The Effects tab looks pretty similar to the Editing tab. We have our same 4 panels as last time: Timeline, Preview, our Effects Control, and our area where we keep our current clips. But now we have this 5th panel on the side. This is where all of our preset effects are currently being held. We'll be using this throughout the course of the video. To start off with, go ahead and make a new timeline for yourself by dragging in the clip called One Snake. Effects in Premiere are very easy to use. All we have to do in order to utilize an effect is find the one we want to use. The way we do that is go up into Effects, and as you can see, we have a few different options. We have presets, Lumetri presets, audio effects, audio transitions, video effects, and video transitions. For this particular video, we're only going to focus on the bottom 2 folders. Go ahead and open up video effects. And for this, I'm going to show you a blur effect. By dropping down blur and sharpen, I'm going to use this one called Gaussian blur. Now, you can drop a Gaussian blur or any effect onto any clip 2 different ways. You can either click and drag it on, or with your clip selected, just double click on the effect. You'll know that the effect is on the clip once you see it pop up in the effects controls. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, I just put a blur on this, but if you look at the screen, you can tell that it still looks just as sharp as ever. That's because effects, just like with our motion and opacity, which we saw in our previous video, can be edited. If we look at what this says, Gaussian blur, we see that we have this option that says blurriness. It's currently set to 0. Since it's in blue, that means I can edit it. So I'll click it, and I'll drag it up and down. The higher I go, the more blurry the image gets. The lower, the sharper it becomes. We also have options underneath blur dimensions. Right now it's going horizontal and vertical. I'll raise my blur up just a little so that we can see it. I'll switch it just to horizontal blur, which gives it almost a speed line effect. Now I'll drop it just to vertical. Every effect in Premiere has several options for you to customize it depending on what you need. You may have also noticed that all these have animation toggles, just like what we saw on our motion effects, as well as our opacity effects. That means that I can change the blurriness of this image over time. This can be extremely helpful, especially if you're trying to go for a particular effect or transition. Let's say that I want this image to come in from a blur and become crisp within a 1-second interval of time. I'll start off by toggling on the animation on blurriness. I like how blurry this is currently, so I'm going to leave my blur at 40. Now, going down to my timecode, I'll type in 100 for 1 second, and now I'll drop my blurriness down to 0. When I play it, the image comes in from a blur. It's a really nice and simple effect. Let's go ahead and take another clip and place it right next to our one currently in our timeline. I'm going to grab this one called 2 Frog and just place it directly next to my snake footage. Right now, if I play through these 2 clips, it'll go from my snake footage and then it'll cut directly into this footage of a frog. This looks perfectly fine, but Premiere offers a lot of different unique transitions that we can try out instead. Underneath Video Effects in the Effects toolbar, go down to Video Transitions and open it up. As you can see, there are several different options already open for you. I'm going to start off with Dissolve, and I'm going to point out this one called Cross Dissolve. Cross Dissolve is an extremely common transition. You may notice that on mine, it has this little blue box around it. That's because it's currently set as my default transition. I'll show you what that means in a minute. To use a transitional effect, we do exactly the same as we would with placing a video effect. I just grab the dissolve, and I just place it between the 2 clips that I want to have transition together. Now, you may notice that I just got a pop-up warning me that my transition isn't going to work correctly because I have insufficient media. What this means is that both of these clips are currently as long as they possibly can be, so there's no frames for them to transition through. I'll give you a visual of what I mean by that. If I hit OK, pay close attention to this frog footage as it starts to fade in. Notice that at first it looks like a still image before coming in. That's because if we look at this transition, what we're essentially trying to do is take our two clips and have them just gently shift opacity between them like this. Basically, if I were trying to raise the opacity of my frog clip up from 0 to 100 while dropping the opacity on the snake clip. But since this is as long as either of these clips get, this cross dissolve is having to basically put a still image of the first and last frame at the beginnings and ends of each of these clips in order to make up for it. Because of this, if I want the transition to work correctly, I just have to shorten my clips a little. So I'll go ahead and shorten up my snake clip, just a couple milliseconds, same with my frog clip, and I'll bring them together. And now when I drop my dissolve in between them, I don't get a warning because they can cleanly dissolve together. If you watch through slowly, you can see that the frog clip is still moving even before it is fully faded in. Now I mentioned a moment ago that the cross dissolve is currently set as my default transition. You can change what you want your default transition to be by simply right-clicking on it and selecting Set Selected as Default Transition. The way we use a default transition is anywhere where you see a split in between clips or a beginning or end of a clip, all you have to do is right-click on it and hit Apply Default Transition, and it'll automatically pop it into place for you. Like our blur effect, we can also edit our transitions. The fastest way to do so is to click on the transition, and if you go near an edge of the transition, you may notice that my cursor turns into a little red bracket. If I press down, I can extend or shrink the transition as much as I want. So if I want a particularly fast transition, I'll just shrink it down more, whereas the longer it is, the slower the transition. We also are able to see our transition a little bit clearer up in Effects Controls. Right now, I can see that my duration of my transition is exactly 1 second long. If I wanted to, though, I could make it as long as 3 seconds. Now, because of the lengths of these clips, I have quite a few repeated frames, which is why the frog is so still at first. But you can still see how you can edit a transition. We also have this option as to where we want our transition to begin at. Right now, mine is centered at the cut, so there's an equal amount of each clip on either side of it. If I change this to start at cut, it'll come in later on. If I say end at cut, the transition will come in earlier. Premiere offers a lot of different effects for you to try playing with and choosing from. Go ahead and take this footage and take the time to go through some different effects and see which ones you like and you think you might want to use more so in the future. In the next video, I'll show you how you can make some of your own preset effects.